In the wings of the Las Vegas Unity Center, Pastor Benny Hinn adjusted his custom cream and gold suit, ready for the roar of the crowd. But his world froze when Steven Seagal, the 60-year-old, bearded Aikido master, approached him. There was a storm in Seagal's eyes, a terrifying calm that radiated a force heavier than any physical threat. "Pastor," Seagal's voice was a low, gravelly tone, "the message I carry tonight is not my own. It comes directly from Jesus, and it is designed to shatter everything you've built." Then, the stage manager's voice crackled. "You're on in 30 seconds. Before I tell you the exact words that brought this spiritual giant to his knees, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. Now, let's get into it." The stage lights flared to life, illuminating the magnificent auditorium. The stage of the Unity Center was a spectacle of modern faith, a multi-million-dollar cathedral of light and sound nestled in the heart of Las Vegas. Banks of LED screens displayed abstract images of flowing water and celestial light, and the music from the house band was polished, powerful, and emotionally resonant. Pastor Julian Vance, the host, stood center stage, his smile as bright as his perfectly tailored suit. He was a man who radiated success and effortless charisma, the perfect ringmaster for this grand event. "Tonight, friends, we are truly blessed." Julian's voice boomed, echoing through the packed arena. "We have two men with us whose journeys are a testament to the unpredictable and powerful ways God moves. A man whose ministry has brought miraculous healing to millions for over 50 years, Pastor Benny Hinn." The crowd erupted in thunderous applause. Benny stepped into the light, waving graciously, the familiar warmth of adoration washing over him. He settled into a plush white armchair, the picture of spiritual authority and comfort. And joining him, Julian continued, his voice rising with dramatic flair, "is a man known for his incredible discipline and a philosophy of quiet strength. An icon of the screen who has embarked on a profound spiritual path that has led him here tonight. Please welcome Mr. Steven Seagal." The applause was different this time, more intrigued than adoring. Steven Seagal walked onto the stage with a deliberate, almost unnervingly slow pace. He was not dressed for a television event. He wore a simple black silk shirt and dark pants, his graying beard neatly trimmed, his face an impassive mask. He didn't wave or smile. He moved like a man carrying an immense, invisible weight. He sat down opposite Benny, his presence immediately shifting the atmosphere from a celebratory rally to something intensely serious. The air grew thick, heavy. Julian, ever the professional, tried to steer the ship. "Steven, it's an honor. So many here know you for your films, for your mastery of martial arts. But lately, we hear you've been on a different kind of journey. Can you tell us how this walk of faith began for you?" It was a simple, open-ended question designed to put his guest at ease. But Seagal did not look at the host. Instead, his dark, piercing eyes locked onto Benny Hinn. The connection was so direct, so intense, that the audience fell silent. It felt as if they were intruding on a private, sacred confrontation. "Pastor Vance," Seagal began, his voice deep and measured, each word chosen with absolute precision. "With all due respect, my journey has nothing to do with films, philosophy, or my past life." He paused, letting the statement hang in the air. "I am here tonight for one reason and one reason only. I am here as a messenger." A ripple of confusion went through the crowd. Benny shifted uncomfortably in his chair, a polite smile fixed on his face, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of apprehension. Seagal reached into the inner pocket of his shirt and slowly pulled out a small, unassuming notebook bound in dark brown suede. It looked ancient, personal. He placed it carefully on his knee. "For the past 18 months, Seagal continued, his gaze still fixed on Benny, "I have been experiencing things I cannot explain through logic. Visions, dreams, words spoken into my spirit. I dismissed them at first, but they kept coming. So, I started writing them down." He tapped the suede notebook. "There are 28 specific, documented events recorded in this book. Predictions about people I'd never met. Events I had no way of knowing about. And one by one, with perfect accuracy, all 28 have come to pass. Benny leaned forward slightly, his professional curiosity now genuinely piqued. In his 5 decades of ministry, he'd encountered countless people who claimed to have visions. But this was different. There was no religious fervor in Seagal's delivery, no hint of pride. There was only the grim, stoic resolve of a man performing a difficult duty. 28 fulfilled prophecies? Benny asked, his voice smooth but carrying a new note of caution. That is statistically significant, Mr. Seagal. That moves beyond coincidence. Seagal gave a single, solemn nod. It is not a gift I asked for, he said. But 3 nights ago, the purpose of these trials became clear. The visions were not the message. They were merely the training. They were to prepare me to stand here tonight and deliver a message meant only for you, Pastor Hinn. A message that I was told would change the entire course of your life and ministry. The camera zoomed in on Benny's face. The polite smile was gone, replaced by an expression of profound and utter shock. The silence in the Unity Center was absolute. It was no longer a television broadcast. It felt like a holy tribunal. The 20,000 people in the arena, along with millions watching at home, were holding their collective breath, forgotten spectators to a drama unfolding between 2 men under the glare of the stage lights. Julian Vance, the host, seemed to shrink in his chair, understanding that the show was no longer his to run. Steven Seagal's focus remained unbroken, a laser beam of intention aimed directly at Benny Hinn. 3 nights ago, he began, his voice dropping to a lower, more intimate register that forced everyone to lean in. I was in my hotel room in New York. I had just finished a series of interviews. I was exhausted, not in my body, but in my soul. The kind of exhaustion that makes you question everything. He described dropping to his knees on the cold hotel carpet. I wasn't praying for anything specific, he confessed. I was just surrendering. I asked God, why me? Why are you showing me these things? I'm not the man for this. My life has been one of discipline and control. This was chaos. It was beyond my understanding. His voice, usually so controlled, cracked with a raw vulnerability that was more powerful than any martial arts display. And then it happened. Seagal's breathing became shallow. He wasn't acting. The memory was visceral, present. The atmosphere in the room changed. It wasn't a feeling. It was a physical shift. The air became thick, electric, like right before a lightning strike. I could feel a pressure, a presence so immense, so absolute, that I was pinned to the floor. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. He looked at Benny, his eyes pleading for understanding. And then I heard the voice. It wasn't with my ears. It was deeper. It spoke from inside my own spirit, but it was not my own voice. It carried the authority of 1,000 galaxies, the weight of eternity. It was unmistakable. Benny's heart was pounding in his chest. As an evangelist who had built a global ministry on the supernatural, he knew the territory Seagal was describing. He had been in rooms where the presence of God was tangible. But the way Seagal spoke of it, with such raw, unvarnished awe and terror, sent a cold dread through him. The voice addressed me by name, Seagal continued, his own body trembling slightly at the recollection. It told me that my season of questioning was over, and my season of obedience was to begin. It said, I have chosen you, the one who trusts in his own strength, to deliver a message that requires the complete surrender of another man's strength. Seagal paused, his gaze intensifying on Benny. And then, Pastor, the voice spoke of you. A wave of gasps rippled through the audience. Benny's face had drained of all color. He looked like a man who had just seen a ghost. The voice said, Seagal declared, his tone now taking on a prophetic resonance. There's a man known to the world as Benny Hinn, whose season of comfort and global acclaim is ending. He has built a great work in my name, a work of signs and wonders. But I am now calling him away from the platforms he has built, away from the applause of man, to a life of unseen sacrifice that will bring me a greater glory. Benny stared, speechless. His mind raced, trying to process the audacity of the statement. Him? Leave his ministry? The crusades, the television network, the millions of partners. It was the work of a lifetime, a divine commission. This cannot be. Benny finally managed to whisper, the words barely audible. God builds ministries. He doesn't dismantle them. That is not his way. It was a statement of faith, a defense of his entire life's theology. But Seagal was not finished. He leaned forward, his voice dropping to an almost conspiratorial whisper, yet every microphone picked it up with chilling clarity. The voice told me you would say that your logic would fight against it, Seagal said. So it gave me a key, a name to prove that this message does not come from any human source. He held Benny's gaze. The voice said, speak his true name to him, so that he may know I see not as man sees. Tell him, I am calling Tufik Benedictus Hinn. The name struck Benny like a physical blow. He flinched violently, his body recoiling in the chair as if he'd been hit by an electric shock. His mouth fell open, and a strangled gasp escaped his lips. The name Tufik Benedictus Hinn, his birth name, the name of his childhood in Jaffa, a name he had not used or even heard spoken aloud in over 40 years. It was a secret buried under decades of public identity. Almost no one alive, certainly no one in this audience, could have possibly known it. Ow! Benny whispered, his voice trembling, broken. How could you know that name? The fortress of his certainty, built over 50 years of ministry, had just been breached. And through the cracks, a terrifying, divine light was pouring in. The revelation of his birth name had shattered Benny Hinn's composure. The global evangelist, the man of unshakable faith, was now visibly trembling on a stage in front of thousands, his face a mask of disbelief and dawning horror. He was no longer a pastor in control. He was a man laid bare, his deepest secret exposed by a messenger he never could have anticipated. The crowd watched in stunned, reverent silence. Steven Seagal did not gloat. His expression softened with a hint of compassion, but his resolve was like iron. He understood the shock, the spiritual violence of the moment. He had argued with God himself for 3 days over this very message. Pastor Hinn, I know this is unbelievable, Seagal said, his voice steady. I fought it. I told the Lord he had the wrong man to deliver this message. I'm not worthy. But he was insistent. He began to give me details, things about your life, so that you would have no doubt about the source. Seagal opened the suede notebook on his lap, though he didn't look at it. The words were burned into his memory. His voice took on the cadence of a witness testifying to an undeniable truth. 18 months ago, Seagal began, looking directly into Benny's eyes. You were in your study late at night with your wife, Suzanne. The doors were closed. No one else was there. You confessed to her that despite the enormous crowds, despite the undeniable miracles, you felt a deep sense of incompletion. You told her, I feel like God is preparing me for something else, a calling that will require a level of faith I haven't had to use yet. Every word hit Benny like a hammer blow. He stared at Seagal, his mouth agape. That conversation was one of the most intimate, private moments of his marriage. It was a vulnerable confession whispered to his wife in the dead of night. There were no recordings, no staff, no witnesses. It was impossible for anyone to know. You said to her, Seagal continued, his voice unwavering, if God asked me to give up the crusades tomorrow, I would. I just don't understand what more he could possibly want from me. Benny gripped the arms of his chair, his knuckles turning white. His whole body was shaking now. How? In the name of God, could you know that? He stammered, his voice cracking under the strain. But Seagal pressed on, the divine revelation flowing through him, relentless and precise. And 2 weeks ago, you had a dream. You never told another soul about it, not even Suzanne. In the dream, you saw yourself standing in a bare, concrete room. It was cold, damp, hidden away. You were surrounded by believers whose faces you didn't recognize, and they were speaking a language you did not understand. You were not wearing your suit. There was no stage, no microphone, no cameras. You were just kneeling on the floor with them, your hands lifted in worship, and you felt a closeness to God more profound than you have ever felt under the lights of an arena. This final detail broke through Benny's last line of defense. A low moan escaped his lips. The dream had haunted him, driving him to his knees in prayer for an interpretation he couldn't grasp. To hear it described with perfect accuracy by a stranger was a violation of his very soul. "This is not real," he whispered, as if trying to convince himself. "This cannot be happening." "The voice told me you would resist," Seagal said gently. "Not from a rebellious heart, but because a human mind cannot comprehend how intimately the Creator knows the secret longings of his creation." Benny finally found his voice, a desperate plea laced with confusion and fear. What is God asking of me? What could possibly be greater than reaching millions with healing and hope? The question hung in the air, an echo of his own words spoken to his wife in secret. Seagal leaned forward, his expression grave. "He is calling you to exchange the seen for the unseen. He is calling you to become a hidden missionary to the suffering church." The words landed with devastating weight. "No more live broadcasts," Seagal elaborated. "No more packed stadiums. No more best-selling books. He is summoning you to the underground, to nations where proclaiming the name of Christ is a death sentence. You will go to believers who worship in secret, in basements, in crumbling warehouses, in mountain caves in places like Iran. They have been praying for an experienced minister of healing to come and strengthen them, and God has chosen you." "My ministry," Benny pleaded, his voice breaking. "It reaches the world. How can God ask me to abandon that reach for something so small, so obscure?" "The voice said," Seagal answered, his eyes filled with a powerful empathy. "What Benny sees as shrinking, I see as ascending. His crusades have brought comfort to the masses. This new calling will breathe life into the martyrs. He will exchange the applause of men for a crown of eternal significance." The weight of the command was crushing him, the sheer, terrifying magnitude of the sacrifice. His entire identity, his life's work, his organization, his family security, all of it was tied to the ministry he had built. "And the Lord gave me a timeline," Seagal added, his voice dropping once more. "He said that in exactly 35 days from this very night, you will receive a sign so miraculous, so personal, and so undeniable that you will be left with no choice but to say yes." Benny's head snapped up, his tear-filled eyes locking with Seagal's. The last vestiges of his resistance crumbled, replaced by a single, desperate question. "What sign?" Benny's question, "What sign?" was not a challenge. It was the desperate plea of a drowning man gasping for a final piece of solid ground in a world that had turned to water beneath his feet. The weight of the prophecy was suffocating, but the promise of a sign, a confirmation, was the only thing he could cling to. The vast arena felt impossibly small, reduced to the sacred, terrifying space between two men. Steven Seagal took a slow, deliberate breath, as if gathering the spiritual strength to deliver the final, most intricate part of the message. The details he was about to share were so specific, so deeply personal, that they were designed to bypass all human doubt. "Pastor Hinn," Seagal said, his voice now gentle but firm, "on the 35th day from tonight, you will receive a phone call. The call will come from your nephew, Leo." The name landed like another shockwave. Benny's eyes widened, a fresh wave of disbelief washing over him. Leo, his sister's son, a brilliant, successful tech entrepreneur in Seattle. Leo was family, yes, but he was also the most entrenched skeptic Benny knew. He was always respectful, but he viewed his uncle's ministry with a kind of detached, intellectual curiosity, as one might study an interesting, but ultimately illogical cultural phenomenon. Healing, miracles, visions, to Leo, these were things to be explained by psychology and sociology, not by God. "Leo," Benny echoed, his voice a hoarse whisper. "But he doesn't believe in any of this. He's never accepted the supernatural. He thinks that is precisely why God has chosen him," Seagal interrupted softly. The voice said, "I will speak through the mouth of the skeptic, so that even the most devout believer cannot doubt my hand." The divine logic was both terrifying and perfect. "Leo will call you on that day," Seagal continued, painting the scene with meticulous detail. He will sound confused, disturbed. He will tell you that he had a dream the night before. A dream so vivid and real it has shaken him to his core. In this dream, he will see you, clear as day, standing in what he'll describe as a basement or an underground tunnel. Benny held his breath, his body rigid. He will see people around you, Seagal went on, his eyes never leaving Benny's. Men, women, and children dressed in simple, modest clothing. He will tell you they are speaking a language he has never heard, but he will describe it to you. A language that sounds like Farsi. A choked sob escaped Benny's throat. He raised a trembling hand to cover his mouth, the specificity of the vision piercing him like a shard of glass. In the dream, Leo will see you kneel down beside a little girl, no older than 8 or 9. He will know, intuitively, that she is blind, that she was born that way. And as you place your hands over her eyes and pray, he will see a soft light, a literal, tangible light, shine from your hands. And he will watch as her eyes open for the very first time. Benny began to tremble uncontrollably now, his carefully constructed composure finally shattering. This was too much, too detailed, too sacred. No human mind could fabricate such an encounter. But there is more, Seagal said, his voice rising with holy intensity. The final confirmation. Leo will tell you that just before the little girl was healed, you spoke 3 words to her. 3 words in Farsi. And even though he does not know the language, he will hear them perfectly in the dream and repeat them to you over the phone. Seagal paused, letting the impossible weight of the moment settle. The voice told me those 3 words, Pastor, he said quietly. The words are, Is Hadazit Darid. He translated, it means Jesus loves you. The full magnitude of the prophecy crashed down upon Benny Hinn. His nephew, the secular, rational, intellectual skeptic, receiving a prophetic dream, describing an underground church in Iran, witnessing a supernatural healing, and perfectly repeating 3 Farsi words he had never heard. It annihilated reason. It defied coincidence. It left only one terrifying, inescapable conclusion. This was the voice of Almighty God. But it was the final detail that would utterly break him. The voice told me one last thing, Seagal said, his own voice cracking with emotion. When Leo calls you, he won't just describe the dream. He'll tell you that he saw something on your face in that hidden place. A look of pure, unadulterated joy. A joy deeper and more real than any he has ever seen on your face during your televised crusades. And then he will say to you, Uncle Benny, I want to give my life to Jesus. Because in that dream, I finally saw what real purpose looks like, and I want that. The word struck Benny with the force of a physical blow. For over 20 years, Leo's salvation had been the deepest, most fervent, unspoken prayer of his heart. The thought that his skeptical nephew would come to faith, not through a sermon or a miracle he witnessed on TV, but through a vision of his uncle's ultimate sacrifice. It was a divine poetry too painful and beautiful for his soul to bear. A deep, guttural sob ripped from Benny's chest. He doubled over in his chair, his body convulsing. The polished facade of the global minister dissolved completely, revealing a broken, weeping man. He gasped for air between ragged sobs, his hands gripping the armrests as if they were the only things holding him together. The dam had broken. In front of the world, Benny Hinn completely and utterly collapsed. That moment on stage revealed a profound and unsettling truth. Sometimes the greatest promotion in the kingdom of God is not to a larger stage, but to a smaller, hidden altar. True spiritual authority isn't measured by the size of the crowd that applauds you, but by the weight of the cross you are willing to carry when no one is watching. Benny's collapse wasn't a breakdown. It was the breaking ground for his true calling. Have you ever felt a calling to do something that terrified you? Something that required you to leave your comfort zone behind? How do you define success in your own life? Is it based on public recognition or a private sense of purpose? Do you believe that the most important messages can come from the most unexpected messengers, challenging everything we think we know? What would you have done if you were in Benny's shoes, faced with such an impossible choice? If this story about ultimate sacrifice and radical obedience resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more true stories that explore the depths of faith. Share this with someone who you know is standing at a crossroads, trying to find the courage to choose the harder, more meaningful path. We read and respect every single comment you leave below. Your voice matters in this community. More powerful stories about life-altering divine encounters are waiting for you on the screen right now. Click on one of those to watch next. And we will see you tomorrow with another incredible account of faith being put to the ultimate test. See you then.